Dragon Riders, Kaze no Kaeru, by Night Dragon Zero. Chris's perspective. Heads up, Duracia warned. I reached up and snatched the flying fish out of midair. Hey, you guys are supposed to be cooking the food, not fighting with it, I laughed. Well, this dumb dragon started it. Well, this inferior human male started it. That was my traveling partner Jade, and Firestorm my Charizard. Apparently, there was a debate going on about who'd knocked the pot of water over. The 18-year-old photographer and the Charizard were now going eye to eye, which was an amusing sight considering what Firestorm could have done to Jade if he wanted to. Crispy fry. Boys will be boys. Duracia slithered up, curling her long snake-like body, and lay her head down on my lap. The Dragonair had an almost as good, if not better talent for blurting out wisecracks than her trainer, Jade. Those were the two Pokemon who spoke our language, the human language as they called it. I'm Chris Ivorse, and this was a typical night camping out for us, the Dragon Riders, as we called ourselves, caught up in a battle between the ancient dragon gods of light and darkness. Not something any typical trainer would tell you, but we were far from being ordinary. Now we're just missing someone, I reminded myself sadly. That would be Night Slice. The Scyther had lost control of the dark power within him, and had almost killed me. I never blamed him, but he'd run away, not wanting to be a threat to anyone else. I did respect his wishes, but I cared deeply for him too. I just had to find him. We'd heard rumors of some mysterious Pokemon being seen around here lately. It was a long shot, but I just had to try. Hey Chris, your food's gonna get cold if you keep staring at the stars like that, Jade said. Oh yeah, I muttered, snapping out of my daydream. Chris, we'll find him. Firestorm put on his most reassuring voice. I'll make sure of it. Yeah, so lighten up already, Duracia added in. Thanks. We care about Night Slice too. Firestorm put a claw on my shoulder. After all, he seems to lead us on to every part of our quest. We'd be kinda lost without him. Hey, Jade! Having accidentally let the campfire die down, Jade grabbed Firestorm's flaming tail and used it to relight the fire. Just a second, Storm, Jade muttered. No! My tail is not your personal lighter! Period! The Charizard roared, flaring his wings furiously. Hope you two have this much energy tomorrow, I laughed. Ow! I bit my lip to keep myself from crying out. There was an ache in my hands again. Some injury I'd gotten in a previous battle 2 months ago when we liberated Silph Company from Team Rocket. Nothing serious, just that sometimes my muscles would stiffen up, and I'd have problems moving my fingers independently of one another. Another long day, I thought, flexing my fingers to clear the numbness. Night Slice's perspective. So be it then. I had absolutely no idea what to expect. Therefore, it came as a complete shock when some unseen force abruptly shoved me back and held me suspended in midair. I tried to scream, but the same force held my jaws stationary and spread my limbs and wings out. I was completely paralyzed, unable to even do so much as blink an eye. What the hell? Just try to relax, Euphoria said. I couldn't see the specter due to my eye being partially closed, but I could still feel her presence lingering around my body. Hold still so I can take a few measurements. Like I have a choice in the matter, I silently growled. I could feel her moving around my body in circles for a while. Obviously, this was not an easy feat I'd asked of her. Oh, and one more thing. What now? This is going to be very, very painful. What? Oh shit! Ah! Chris's perspective. I awoke with a start. I swear I'd heard something. Or someone. I glanced over to Jade, Duracia, and Firestorm, still fast asleep. At least Firestorm should have heard it, but he was snoring away, and very loudly for that matter. But some odd feeling seemed to be urging me to get up, some instinct I couldn't really explain. Though I wasn't sure it was just my sense of overcautiousness, I decided to go and take a look. It would only take a few minutes, and my friends wouldn't even know I was gone at all. It was a hot night, and I'd been sleeping in my brown t-shirt and jeans. Those would prove sufficient. However, as a second thought, I reached into my black leather, Charizard-decorated jacket, crumpled in a pile beside my sleeping bag, and got out my utility belt. On it were a few small travel essentials, along them a small flashlight, a pocket knife, and my tranquilizer pistol. I reached for my katana, only to remember that it wasn't there anymore. Night Slice had broken it previously when he'd lost control of his powers and attacked me. It was a present from my late foster father, and yet another thing Night Slice would take the blame for. Perhaps that was why I was so desperate to find him, to tell him that it was all right. To make up for it, I grabbed the nearest 3 Pokeballs and strapped them to the belt, too. Then I heard the scream again. Was it Night Slice? Without thinking, I ran off in the direction that I had thought I'd heard the voice from. Night Slice! Night Slice! I called over and over again, hoping against hope he'd somehow answer. It was about 20 minutes before I'd realized I had absolutely no clue about where I was. Gingerly, I opened up the Pokeballs, revealing Jolteon, Ivysaur, and Riptide the Golduck. Guys? I muttered meekly. I think I just got us lost. Any clues on how to get back? The Pokemon glanced around in all directions, then shook their heads. Thought so, I groaned. And just then, the rain started pouring down. When it rains, it certainly pours, I said, taking off into a run with my Pokemon in tow to find some better cover. One moment, I was simply running. Next thing I knew, this tremendous pain had suddenly exploded into my head. Screaming out, I could still hear the panicked cries of Riptide, Jolteon, and Ivysaur. And I could hear the thunder and the rain pouring down. I was soaked to the bone, but I didn't care. All I could do was keep running. Suddenly, I heard a deafening clap of thunder, and then a burst of heat right next to me. Lightning had struck a tree practically beside me. I heard the painful yelp of the others. They must have been fairly close by. I became aware that my vision was spinning. I was tumbling down a steep slope, too shocked to do anything. I cried out in pain, rolling head over heels on the hard, dirt-covered slope, bumping into every rock, tree branch, and root in my path. That was when I felt something was seriously wrong with me. My fingers. I couldn't feel them. Yet my hands and wrists seemed all right. I felt something on my back, something that caused the loud ripping sound of my shirt. My face, it didn't feel right. More ripping sounds. I was quickly losing both strength and consciousness. One final thought escaped my mind. Jeez, what a stupid way to die. Night Slice's perspective. I groaned, slowly and painstakingly pulling myself back to consciousness. I was lying on my chest, staring down at my own hand. A human hand. Instantly, I bolted up on my knees, completely awake. I held the hand up and clenched my fist. Wow, 5 digits. That was pretty much a new experience for me. Although as the Night Blazer, I've had a 5-fingered hand before. Good morning. Looks like you're finally up. I have to move you further into the cave because the tide was rising. Euphoria's cheerful voice greeted me. How do you feel? I had to stare around for a bit before I finally saw her. The ghostly Ninetales stood several feet away, casually swaying her tails. Although she was as close as ever, her voice still sounded rather distant. I begun, holding a hand to my mouth. My voice sounded quite different, now without the snarl or the raspy growl in it. No more snout, too, I silently noted. It feels great, I answered. Unfortunately, also like I've gone blind and deaf. Humans don't exactly have the best of senses, but they're sufficient, Euphoria said. Yeah, I suppose, I muttered. Well, I had been asking for it, after all. Oh, and look at yourself. You're all naked. Huh? Oh! I turned away, turning slightly red. The new human side of my mind was telling me that I was embarrassed. Never mind that. Now catch! A bundle of clothes seemed to appear out of nowhere. I fell over trying to catch them. Hope you know how to put those on, the fox giggled. I know. Well, sorta. It took a few minutes of experimenting, much to Euphoria's amusement, but I eventually got all the pieces in the right places. Not bad, she muttered. Take a look at yourself, handsome. She gestured towards a pool of water, lit up by the sunlight streaming in through several holes in the cavern roof. Pulling myself to my feet, I had a few shaky steps before I got my balance right and managed to walk over to the pool of clear water. Taking a deep breath, I looked down. I wore a white shirt covered by a brown sleeveless vest with a yin and yang symbol on the back and a pair of blue jeans. I ran a hand through my black-colored hair, ear-length and neatly combed back. I basically resembled a 15 to 16-year-old Japanese person in most respects, all except for your eyes, Euphoria told me. Take a closer look. Indeed, they were familiar, but didn't seem to match. They were a deep blue and seemed to give a piercing stare. They're unchanged, I mused. Still Scyther. Yes, I couldn't do anything about those. It shouldn't matter too much either way, but here. I was tossed a pair of sunglasses. Not bad, I grinned, putting them on and admiring my new appearance. I take it you're satisfied? The fox asked. Certainly, I replied. This opens up a whole new world for me. But first, how do I get out of this place? It's just a short swim through the pool, Euphoria instructed. It'll take you back to the beach. So, you're leaving already? Yes, I would like to try exploring for a bit. I nodded, barely able to contain my excitement. I'd tell you to be careful, but I'm sure you already know that one. And how about you, Euphoria? I asked. I'll be staying around here for a while longer, the Nine-Tailed Spirit said, just in case you need me. After all, my services come with a 90-day warranty. No refunds, though. I'll keep that in mind, I laughed. When I laughed this time, I realized that I still wasn't as happy as I expected myself to be. Something in the back of my mind was bugging me, and it had nothing to do with formerly being a bug-type Pokemon. Chris's perspective. I awoke to the sound of running water. I was briefly aware that I was lying on my back in the grass. Ow, my head is still spinning, and my back really aches too. What the heck have I been lying on? I shifted my hand slightly and realized my fingers refused to move. What the? Heart pounding, I brought up my other hand and felt the exact same thing on it. I was afraid to open my eyes, but I finally decided to just get it over and done with, and that's exactly what I did. At first, I thought there were two swords being pointed down at me. Then I realized they were mine, my own claws. No way, I thought. This has to be a dream. I flipped myself up on my feet, going faster than I normally would. I found myself staring down at them after that. Green, three-toed dinosaur-like ones. I also noticed that my face had been pushed out in a snout-like muzzle. I felt some new muscles on my back and stretched them. I turned my head to find a pair of mantis-like wings spread out to their full extent. Though I already knew, I slowly looked over my entire green-scale body, slashed my sword-like claws about, and thumped my head into several trees before I finally conceded. I'm a Scyther. But what the hell happened? I surveyed my surroundings. It was around mid-morning, and I was in a forest standing beside a small stream. Okay, simple enough. Turning around, I saw that steep hill I'd fallen down the night before. Only problem was that it seemed to stretch on, with no definite way to tell exactly one part from another. Yeah, the storm last night. I ran off without thinking and I fell, but what after that? Had I died and been reincarnated? Heck, maybe I'd always been a Scyther and I'd just been dreaming about the human bit. No! I silently screamed, shaking the thought out of my head. You won't take my mind away from me! I collapsed against a tree, realizing that all the thinking was actually hurting my head. Who had I been fighting with? Myself? No, it was some other instinct, something I couldn't possibly understand. I closed my eyes and tried to catch a few breaths. Then I sniffed and, whoa, the sensations that erupted into my mind. My senses, hearing, smell, and sight were far beyond what any humans could have been. I could hear and identify practically every background sound. There, that one's a Caterpie, that's Weedle, a Metapod, and a Spinnerack. Amazing! If only the others could... Storm and the rest! Damn, I'd completely forgotten. They would have gotten up in the morning to find me missing. Firestorm! Jade! I yelled, or at least that's what I wanted to say. What came out of my mouth was, Scyther! Then it hit me. That little fact about Pokemon speech. We Pokemon don't speak in human language normally. Did I just say that? I asked myself. Ivysaur? Jolteon? Riptide? Any of you there? I desperately tried. The three Pokemon had been with me last night, but there was no reply. Shit! I realized that I wouldn't be able to get any help from the human world if I couldn't communicate properly. Not like I'd wanted to get near any towns in my current condition. They'd probably start tossing Pokeballs at me, a rare and powerful Pokemon. The thought of myself, a freak of nature, Scyther with human's mind, forced to live the rest of my life out here, filled me with a great sense of dread and despair, one that I'd never known before.